The AZ industry is rapidly changing, but your team doesn't have time to reinvent workflows for every new technology or client demand. ProjectWise, powered by iTwin, puts you in control and positions your firm for non-disruptive change. Whether you need to improve design quality, optimize existing processes, or even get started with digital delivery and digital twins, ProjectWise enables you to make the most of what you already have without starting over. Visit go.bentley.com/podcast to see how ProjectWise is empowering AEC firms to do more with less. Once again, that's go.bentley.com/podcast to learn more. Welcome to Engineering Influence Podcast for the American Council of Engineering Companies, brought to you by Bentley Systems, the bringers of ProjectWise. It's an infrastructure delivery software system, and very happy for them to sponsor our podcast today at the 2023 Annual Convention and Legislative Summit happening in Washington, D.C., and very pleased to be joined by Marci Rossell, and she is best known, of course, co-host with the Squawk Box CNBC. Former co-host Squawk Box CNBC, but a noted economist and a speaker who is. I was watching your presentation, and I thought it was fantastic because I think that the big thing is as the son of an economist and always, I know. Agricultural economist, so even more.
Yeah, even slicing that bologna, okay.
Yeah, pigs and chickens sent me through college.
My dad's a farmer, so same for me.
Exactly, right? So I actually reinforced. There's a reason why economics is a social science, right?
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely,
it's just how am I perceiving the world?
And what's fascinating is that it is true that this was a real revolution in the economic sciences that started really, with Lucas in the 1980s and beginning to understand that people's expectations of inflation can be just as important as what the actual number is. That where people think interest rates are headed is really more important than where they are today. In the sense, if you think about the housing market right now, it's kind of in this pause because people expect rates to come down in the future, so they don't want to move right now.
Yeah.
And they were expecting rates to go up in 2021, 2022, so everybody rushed to buy when interest rates are really low. And so expectations can have a really, it can be a really critical piece of understanding an economy, particularly one that's so bizarre like the one today.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just how much for it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I mean, I don't know what it is about our industry, but we've been doing these quarterly, surveys of the executives and saying exactly, okay, how are you doing and how's the macro economy doing? It's always been, well, I don't really like the macro economy. I think the economy is going to take a nosedive, but I'm doing fantastic.
We see that across the board.
Yeah.
It is across the board. I was at a party last summer, and it was in my hometown. I live in a really small town in Michigan. Some people know what I do. Some people don't know that I'm an economist, but I was sitting with a friend who did know that I was an economist. We started talking about the stock market and everything, and he asked me, did I think the economy was in a recession?
Yeah.
This was a year ago. Is the economy in recession? And before I could even speak, the woman next to me goes, oh, I know the economy's in recession. So I turned around and I said, well, why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah.
And she's a small business owner in my town. So she goes on to tell me all these reasons why she thinks it's in a recession. And I said, well, how's your business? She goes, gangbusters, never been better.
Never been better. Yeah.
Never been better. And it's like those two things, unless you are in a perfectly counter-cyclical business, can't be true.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely true that there's sort of the micro level of the economy, how people feel about things, and many times that is not reflected in the overall sort of macroeconomic statistics. And as I pointed out to the audience earlier, our political affiliations have become to play more and more of a role in how we feel about the economy. So, I don't believe the, unemployment statistics. I think it's this or I think it's that. Well, you can think all day long, but there are actual numbers that are put together by professionals who have no dog in the hunt other than they want the number to be right.
Yes.
And so, I'm very confident, if not in the actual numbers that come out, then certainly in the direction of whether they're moving up or down in a certain way.
Yeah. And also, I think that there's something to be said for the fact that, what you just earlier said about how a lot more research is coming out about, how people's perceptions are shaping, the way the economy is going and how the numbers are moving, and the fact that we're not in the economy that we were back in the 80s. We're not nowhere close. We're not seeing these interest rates that a lot of young people. I was born in '77, so I didn't experience them, but my parents did. They bought a house in '79, and their interest rate was about, I don't know, maybe it was about 18%.
Yeah.
Right.
It was definitely in the double digits.
And I bought right as the pandemic set in, and I was at practically nothing.
Yeah.
It was beautiful then, but even when we were seeing like 1-2%, that's nothing compared to where we were. And the fact that the way we are, as you mentioned, we're a net exporter of energy now, right? We are
It's one of the biggest, most underappreciated fundamental changes. Now, it does have environmental impacts, and those have to be properly priced in, right? And one of the things that economies don't always do so well is price in externalities, pollution, spillovers that are negative, and that's the struggle, around the discussion today. But you can't deny that this is a genuine industry, and that it has, radically changed in many states, like Oklahoma, the Dakotas, places where, this sort of booming shale oil industry has changed dramatically. It used to be that the only state that benefited from high oil prices was Texas.
Yeah,
right?
Now it's everywhere across the country where either, whether, take the politics out of it, but Pennsylvania, my own state, fracking, there was investment there. You have shale, you have everything else that is completely diversified across the economy, and it's no longer geographically constrained in one area.
Yep, that's exactly right. So fundamental, big changes in the economy.
Really, it's the question, is it time to throw out the old book of reporting? Because now you always see the reporting the same way.
Yeah.
It's kind of going back and using the old argument of saying, well, interest rates, the Fed is either going to raise rates or lower rates, and they kind of go back to the last recession, 2008, where they go back even further and they say, okay, dot-com bubble, like you said. We're not the same country, we're not the same economy demographically, the way that our economy is set up, the way that, it just seems like we're in a different place than we were before, and comparing no longer makes sense.
Well, history is always instructive,
It is,
right?
it is.
It doesn't repeat itself exactly, but it does rhyme, right? And there always are historical lessons to be drawn. But one of the reasons why monetary policy is so hard, why there are so many debates, right, is exactly what you're saying. Think about how much a struggle it's been for the professionals at the Federal Reserve, who this is the only thing they do. This is their job.
Raise,
right?
They have a lever, and that's it.
That's right. That's it. But they are struggling and having to discuss and figure out sort of where, forecasting is really, really hard. It's really, really hard, and it's even harder, for the legions of people who don't have PhDs in economics. But I will say that one of the interesting things that's developed, I would say, in the last 5 years or so, that made forecasting and analysis during the pandemic so much easier, was the development of big data sets and big data set analyzing tools that allow you to take things like credit card data and analyze consumer spending, not with a month-long lag. You can do it in real time.
Yeah.
We had geographic data that came from Google that told us, how people were traveling, where they were going at any given time. That was economic information that was extremely valuable. So in some ways, forecasting has gotten easier, but it's also gotten harder. But the data is so different than it used to be.
That raises a really interesting question. So we always talk about AI and emerging technologies, how it's going to impact engineering. But from a econometric standpoint, that's going to change the game because you can take these massive historical data sets and you can run different analyses and come out with different extrapolations.
That's right. You can do all sorts of things with history.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. But the limit of AI, and it's the same limit, that will reveal itself across industries, is that's all it can do.
Yeah.
All it can do is examine what is known already.
Yeah.
And what makes the world interesting and what makes human intelligence so different is that our intelligence creates completely new things out of nothing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so AI appears to be reaching kind of this creativity barrier. It can synthesize, you can do all sorts of crazy things with what's already out there that maybe I can't do because I can't learn to speak a foreign language like that. So it makes it appear far more powerful than I think it really is.
It's not creating because it's taking what's there.
It's taking what's there.
It's not creating anything new.
That's
from
not inherently what creativity is.
No.
I mean, it makes, it can make great PowerPoints, right? So if you're in the business of just making PowerPoints, your job's going to go away, right? But even so, there aren't that many people who just make PowerPoints for a living anymore.
Exactly.
All it will mean, because no one has an assistant anymore, is that people who make PowerPoints, like maybe me, don't have to spend their time doing it, but I can think about the world and make connections that are truly creative, truly different, and truly boundary pushing in a way that I don't think AI will ever be able to do.
That's a great point. I mean, I see it from just the digital stuff that we do here with the cameras. The fact that there's so much AI put into that, it just eases the processes to be more creative because you're not constrained by those things.
It gives more space to be truly creative. Now, this does create income inequality issues for folks who aren't particularly specialized like you and I.
Or don't have access to the same tools.
Access, and that's where, that's the role that policy has to play. And I'm afraid in some ways policy is really focused on, what if the AI takes over? And the Terminator question is super fun and interesting, but policy really needs to be geared toward what I think is closer to the reality, which is how are you going to deal with the rapid elimination of a lot of functions, right, that are going to make winners and losers. They just are. Now, labor markets are so tight right now that at this moment in time, it's possible that you could have, that eases the reallocation of people from one sector to another because labor markets are so tight and everybody's desperate for workers. So AI couldn't have come along at a better time. And it's probably also the case that the labor shortage is part of the push to develop it. We need it. We just don't have enough people.
And and I think what you made the point of retention is so critically important, and for companies to really focus on it's just keeping the people you have and developing that and checking in and making sure that they stay, because you're right, the fallacy of kids don't want to work anymore, and it's like, well, no, that's not the case.
It's not that people don't want to work, there's simply not enough people to go around to provide the goods and services that will maintain the standard of living that we in the U.S. have become accustomed to and that the rest of the world deserves. Right? The rest of the world deserves to live just like we do. And that will not happen unless the rest of the world can produce the way that we do. And AI is going to be part of that.
It is. That's amazing. And you talked about technologies, and mentioned the smartphone, and that was the last transformative. The iPhone really transformed so much.
Yeah, I'm not buying into those goggly things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Do you think that's a pivot?
No, first of all, they're going to smudge my makeup.
Yeah,
so that's never going to work for me. And I'm looking for AI to truly enhance my human existence, not what I feel would truly be a diminishment of it. I do think there's a certain segment of society that will embrace that kind of technology because, they want that introverted experience that maybe is a little bit, different.
Yeah.
But
nobody's going to be you're not going to see 100 people walk down the street with their augmented reality headsets on.
I don't believe so. Not unless they can make them look like a pair of Gucci sunglasses.
I guess we're not there yet.
No, but we might be one day.
We might be one day.
Right? I mean, little fake Gucci glasses.
Yeah.
But until they can make them look like Gucci glasses, I'm not. No, I mean, some people will. It's not that there's not a market, but for a pair of $3,000 ugly
I
goggles,
think that's the other thing. $3,000 for a
pair of ugly goggles for ski goggles.
Yeah.
Nope. Not buying it.
Crypto was the thing. I mean, that was but at the same time, when you hear everybody talking about crypto, then you know that there's
now,
something.
don't bet against Apple. I will say that.
Yeah.
Don't bet against Apple and their ability to sort of bring the consumer something. But I read, and I can't cite the article, but it was some commentary on it that basically made the point of the original iPhones weren't they were pretty clumsy as well.
Yes.
And sometimes you need consumers to tell you what they want to do with something, right? That it's going to take some consumer feedback for someone to go, hey, you know what? You may think this is going to be used for video games, but what it's really great for is surgery, right? And so I'm going to watch it for that.
Yeah, it might be the product that changes perception in the public about maybe this is a concept that I could get along with if you develop it further down the line.
Yeah, or maybe it's more, maybe the use case is more in manufacturing, in business,
or
it makes workers, engineering, makes workers more productive. So instead of working 8 hours a day, they can work 4 hours a day, which is what is the point.
Yeah.
More output, less effort.
Less effort.
Always, always, always.
Yeah. I think there's so many topics to cover, and I think that you did a fantastic job in your presentation covering a lot of stuff. And I think the two things that you left with were really important. Today's consumer is different. The banks are different. They're not doing the crazy lending that they did in 2008.
And haven't since then. Haven't since then. So it's been 12 years of really conservative lending practices, so you really don't have kind of a credit bubble at the widespread consumer level like you saw in 08.
And our savings levels are higher.
Yeah. The balance sheet of the consumer looks better.
Yeah.
Right? They've got money in the bank, they've got money in housing, they were supported throughout the pandemic.
Exactly.
So, they had tons of income support, not just from government. By the way, It didn't just come from government. It also came from the fact that technology, this thing that we're talking about, allowed people to move to remote work during the pandemic in industries that would have never been able to do it 10 years ago.
And
even 10 years ago.
The ones that said that we never could, and would never consider because it's impossible to do so. And what happened? The market forced them to do it.
Market forced them to do it. And what could have been a possibility that you could have seen job losses in sectors beyond hospitality, hotel, and travel. Imagine those kind of job losses everywhere. Devastating.
I always looked at the pandemic, and of course DC is an odd metro area, and it's just, it's not the same. You can't take it and copy and paste it, but whenever I was in the mall and you look and say, during the pandemic, the luxury stores have lines out the door. There's no way the economy is going down if that's happening. There's just too much disposable income in the economy.
Lots of disposable income and a very low unemployment rate.
Yeah.
So remember those two things together. So 3.7% unemployment rate today pretty much means that anyone who wants a job has a job. That most of the unemployment that we're seeing out there are 6 million people unemployed right now, but it's a very low percentage that are long-term unemployed. Right? And most of it's just transitioning out from one job to another.
Exactly.
A lot of it's that.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I
thank
love this.
you.
It's been great. And again, I mean, just leading with our, I mean, I think the takeaway is that there's a rosy picture. There's no doom and gloom. Don't worry. You're not, the economy's doing well. I think the firm's coming out with 42%, I think, positive finances. We're doing okay.
Yeah. It's doing okay.
Well, Dr. Rossell, thank you so much for
Thank
coming on
you.
the program.
Appreciate it.
And again, this has been an episode of Engineering Influence, a podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies, and we'll see you next time.